Well, I only can talk about classical music
Yeah,
because
please.
I've never worked in popular music, and
Okay.
I'm not very familiar with popular music.
Hmm.
But in the classical music, I would say the tasks and the day of an artist manager hasn't changed at all during the last 20 or even 40 years. The tools that are used are still very old-fashioned. Most of the artist managers work with their paper calendars and with their phones mostly, and a lot of it is still paper-based and people-based. So they work with their own knowledge and asset, whom they know, with their own network, and it's very dependent on people business, and not very modern, I would say.
Hmm. Hmm. So why digitalization then?
Well, that's even more, or why digitalization? Well, we live in the 21st century, and in my opinion, if classical music wants to be still a vivid part of our society, which I hope it will, and I also think it will, then also the structure has to change, and it's very important. There are different aspects that are very important, but one of the most important, I think, that they become more user-centric. So the users, of course, for them are artists. They also are, of course, getting younger. Young artists are used to work online, and not paper-based. So this is one of the reasons, and also young artists expect different things. So they demand for transparency, they demand for democracy, they want to be more, they want to decide more on themselves, and take more responsibility. And the people business as it used to be, is very powerful for certain people, but not for the art, or it's not an advantage for the artists.
So
So
it's
this is one of the most important reasons that the users demand it, and we have to listen to our users, and at the end also the end users. So the audience is getting younger, and in our daily lives we are all used to be very flexible, to have everything in the second we want it, and that's still very difficult in the classical music, apart from some exceptions.
so yeah. So by using this digitalization, it's also not only about using the tools we have in our current technological time and era. It is also about opening up to the
Yes.
other groups that are not familiar with the opera, for example.
Yeah, I mean, times are changing, and I think it's very important that culture is alive. And for me, if we continue not to open up, it will end up like a museum, and or like a show for tourists. But if art wants to interact with their audience, which makes actually the specialty about art and opera and music, that we communicate with our audience. We have to be up to date. We have to know what matters to our audience, and we also have to live it. Otherwise, it will just something that was from the past and that we remember, but it will not be alive.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. What do you think is the problem? Because that's what I've seen in my university often, that we, for example, the scientists, and in your case, probably the artists in the opera and all the other people that are familiar with it, live in a bubble.
Yes, yes. Well, that's one of the most important challenges that the classical music faces, that they don't have the skills right now. and the teams that are working in the classical music management are not diverse. They live in a bubble, as you said. And what is very important actually for all stakeholders, so I talk about managers, I talk about promoters, I talk about artists, that they need to adapt their skills. They need to have some technology knowledge and to know more about their music world. They need to get people that are tech specialists. So that's one of the most important things to do in the future.
Hmm. Hmm. For example, now we have this existential crisis right now, and this would be, for example, an opportunity for
Exactly.
for us as managers. Because I see me as a manager in the future, to use these technological tools we use.
Absolutely. I mean, now it's the time that we still have to connect to people even more, I think, than when everything was open. A lot of people are lonely or really are in need of support. So that's the time when people also are looking for arts and entertainment. And if the classical music is not available, they will just go somewhere else. And I think it's a huge opportunity right now, because now people are forced to do it. I think the classical music ignored it for a long time because they get substitute from the state. They don't have to be economically poorly self efficient. And now in a time of a crisis, it's, for me, it's the best thing to do, to invest in the future and not to wait to return to the past. I think now it's the time to change, and also to think about what are the possibilities of new business models. How can cultural institutions also make money digitally? I'm sure there are many. So I think we missed already a lot of time to do so. But if it hasn't happened until now, I think the time is now to adapt and to change.
Hmm. So you're seeing it as missed opportunities. Uh, they were missed many times when there was an opportunity, but I know you're going to hold a talk on the first,
Mm.
but I am very curious about the topic. And could you give me a raw concept, or only a raw concept about what you are going to talk, and uh, especially about the technological side? I'm very curious.
Sure. Well, I will give an overview about the potential of digitalization in the artist management. So I will give an overview how the artist management is working right now. So until today, it's working in silos actually. So the artists, the promoters, and the promoters for themselves, and they depend of each other. The most of the power lies with the promoters, and the audience is just is a little bit ignored, in my opinion. And then we have, of course, as a stakeholder, also the public sponsoring, public and private sponsoring. And for the future, due to different influences, there will be a huge change. So the interactions will change. Artists will communicate more directly to the promoter, more directly to the public, also to the audience, because of digital tools. So we see it mostly in the social medias or through websites, but this has to increase enormously. So there are still many artists in the classical music that they don't have
Hmm.
a website, or they don't use social media very professionally. So in my opinion, that will change. And what I will talk about in the talk is also about the different changes for the stakeholders. So the changes for artists, the changes for promoters, and the changes for artist managers. And the influences that I will talk about is digital branding, social media, and also digital administration.
So artist management has to cover a lot of jobs, like I understand it. So artist management could also be that you have to do social media management for
Yes,
the
yes.
artist.
So in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, artist managers have to define themselves a new
Mm-hmm.
role. I think it's the intermediary that the role they have right now as an intermediary will disappear, because artists and promoters will do more directly together. And I think artist managers will have to do more work in social media, in marketing, in PR. It's very important that all these medias are structured and underlie also a strategy, and that's where artist managers will be needed in the future.